part 2. I hope the last video was helpful, and I'm excited to cover the next part with you guys. I'll be covering things in similar fashions, just to make it easier to compare back and forth, if you so want, desire to do so. First, we're going to briefly cover queer. Queer in itself could be a whole video on its own, so please bear that in mind. In short, queer is a broad term used to describe the LGBTQ community. It started as meaning peculiar or strange, and it became a slur against those with same-sex desires or relationships in the late 19th century. In recent years, however, it's seen a reclaiming as people use the word in relation to themselves in a positive way. And secondly, let's cover LARP in very broad terms, just to give you an idea. It's any game where you physically act out the actions of the character that you play in some fashion. There are several variations of this style, but basically it's not sitting at a table. And what you enjoy in a LARP can vary widely, and I'll cover this in greater detail later on my channel, so stay tuned for that. With that out of the way, let's move into the actual topic. Being queer in LARP spaces and how that can affect player comfort and participation. Many games have stepped forward and made awesome positive changes already, and that's great. However, it never hurts to be aware of the broad range of what a group would like and look at incorporating those desires in storylines. I set up a series of questions and invited LARPers who identified as part of the LGBTQ community to answer them. They're anonymous, so I'll be reading some of the responses partially, but I have no names, no genders, none of that. I just know that they identify as part of the LGBT community and that they are LARPers. I wanted to offer a wider view of where I feel the pitfalls in our LARP communities are, since I'm just one person, and while my queerness is a factor in my enjoyment, it's not a main push. Some of the following views aligned with mine, so I know I'm not alone in feeling what I feel, so hopefully this can help other LARP organizers to understand what players may want to see in their games, and therefore get more players, which we always like. So, let's get started. Queer in LARP. What it means and how it affects stories. Of those that replied, most of them have been playing at least 5 years, and at most 21 years. A few mentioned being bisexual or gay, but as I left these anonymous, I can't really tell you what gender they might be, if any. Some had friends or partners or family that introduced them, or they found it through a college club. So I did 6 questions, and this is what I asked. How long have you been LARPing? Do you still LARP? If so, what keeps you coming back? If you stopped, what stopped you? Would you consider returning if some problems were improved or removed? How does LARPing tie into your identity, if at all? What are some of the biggest hurdles you've encountered in LARPing, and do you feel that it was because of your identity that you experienced them? What would you change, if you could? How can LARP organizers better serve the LGBTQ community, in your opinion? My sample group was super small. I only got 8 replies, and that's okay. I would love to revisit this again, and if you have similar experiences and you feel comfortable doing so, please share them below. I'd love to touch back on this later on with a larger size and see if things have improved or if they've gotten worse. However, I'm not going to answer the how long question since I did that up above, but let's go ahead and get into the next one. These responses were nothing I didn't expect from my own time within the community. Lives change, they adapt, and sometimes that means LARP gets left out. After all, it's a hobby, and it's technically a splurge for a budget. It's by no means a necessity, though I do believe it does serve an important social role in today's society. Many of the reasons given were the same ones I share. Some of us love the costumes we get to create and the role we play within the confines of our game. For a lot of us, it's an opportunity to either be our idealized selves or simply not to be ourselves for a couple days. It gives us a space to explore that's generally safer than our day-to-day world. For some of us, it offers a community that we, for some reason or another, haven't found elsewhere. The communities I'm currently a part of, even if I can't physically be at a game for some time, are important to me as an aging adult. My social options as an adult are much different than they were for me 10 years ago. Like some of those I received responses from, LARP is a second family and an extremely supportive community in general. And that brings us to our next question. Of my sample size, most have continued LARPing. And usually if they stop, the reasons why they stopped were pretty simple. They were because they were temporarily unable, because it was medical. And once they were better, they came back. Or they've stopped completely now, and is because they just don't have the time or the energy to put towards going to a game. And that's okay. The other side is honestly much less normal reasons than I got sick or I don't have time. One of the other issues that was brought up as a reason why queer players felt that they have to stop playing for their own safety was because of toxic environments. LARP draws all kinds, and of course most games strive to be open to all. It is, at the end of the day, a service people pay for. I pay a game to provide me with a space and entertainment for a period of time. The more players, the more opportunities for varied interactions. This is generally what we want to see. Sadly, not all our players are good. And I don't mean like they're bad actors or they suck at gaming or any of that. No. I mean that they're not good people. It's understood that some of our hobby will attract awkward people, or basically the outcasts from the main social groups in society. For a long time, LARPing was seen as with the same level of derision as D&D players, but weirder, because at least those nerds had the decency to stay in the basement. Some of these oddballs simply need guidance on what's acceptable in social settings. They're not the problem. They're perfectly fine. Most of them figure it out, and with repeated exposure, they start to become normal people and are pretty cool to hang out with, despite their weird awkwardness. We're all awkward. It's okay. The LARP community at large has a sexual predator problem. It has a bullying issue. Much of the sexual predators are being ousted more readily in the wake of the most recent wave of the Me Too movement, but it still takes far too long for them to be pushed out. Most of these folks become what is known as a missing stare, and I'll circle back to that later, but LARPs also tend to have issues with cliques, and it's fairly common with groups like this. You get a group of friends, and they tend to be all the popular kids, and they hang out, and it's the first time they've gotten the attention that they've wanted for years. And that's cool, awesome, great. It's getting better with the cliques in the last, say, 5 years, with the push to be more inclusive and to not show, how do I say it, show preference for certain things. It's still a long way from where it needs to be, and it shouldn't matter how long someone's played, or how much time and money they donated, or how good a friend they are to the owners of the game or the plot of a game. Unfortunately, that's not really the current reality of many games. And that phenomenon in itself is okay. It's normal human behavior to tribe up with like individuals. It serves us well as a species. That guy's my friend because we have the same dress and we hunt the same things and we're friends. It protects us. It makes us great. It's what's enabled us to get as far as we have as a species. However, it becomes a problem when those favored groups use their perceived power to drive story and interaction in a game, and it sucks even more to be on the side against it and to be ostracized because they're not like that with me. Minority groups in LARP tend to be more vocal about power imbalance, especially in environments where cooperation is preached as a selling point, and is a reason why we should give Game A our money over Game B. When someone uses their position in a game to abuse another, either via sexual assault or blackmail, it's a problem. And it happens all too often within the queer community from the outside, and sometimes within. But honestly, I could rant about this all day, so let's move on to the next question before I get lost in a spiral. The next question is all about how being queer ties in to LARPing, if at all. For me, it helped me realize that being comfortable in my own skin would actually mean I'd have a better time in and out of game. I actually have more meaningful relationships now that I learned how to be comfortable being awkward. I only recently started portraying characters that are even remotely close to my own real-life identity. For the others I got responses from, their answers varied widely. Some queer individuals use it as stress relief, and their identity doesn't really tie into how they participate in a LARP at all. For some, their character helped them to get through real-world problems, like bullying. For others, it can help build a sense of worth in themselves outside of the LARP persona that they adopt. For others, it's still a struggle. Some of the best acting is believable because there's real emotion behind it. The actor pulls from experiences to weigh down their performance into a reality that rings true with the viewer, us. LARP is essentially acting. You play a role, you play a character, and a part of yourself is always there because once the makeup is off, you're what's left. However, a lot of us go to not be ourselves, and that can lead to issues interpersonally. Some individuals can't grasp that because a character is interested in your character, it doesn't mean that the player is interested in your player. And that brings us into our last question. This one touched on a lot of different aspects. It touched on everything from sexism to anxiety to cultural belittling and how not okay that is. Let's very quickly cover some of the things that LARPs really shouldn't be allowing. First, I love y'all, but to my male identifying folks, I love you. I mean it. But stop making others prove how their hobby they are. Gatekeeping is gross on everybody, and unfortunately, male LARPers, particularly white male LARPers, tend to be the worst about it. If you can't help someone improve their game, shut it. Seriously, LARPing is coming together to tell a story, collaboratively. They are not worse at it because they cannot afford the expensive garb, the armor, the weapons, or a cabin decoration. Either help them to reach the level that you think they should, or shush and let them enjoy the game. It's that simple. It's a hobby. It's for fun. Enjoy it. Second, bleed. This one is in common to all LARPers. We all experience bleed, and it can be really, really rough. It's not always easy to see as it happens, but basically, bleed is what happens when something in-game bleeds into your normal life, or vice versa. It can go both ways, which makes it ever so fun. At the end of the day, it's on you to manage yourself. If you blow up at your friends during the bleed, it is still your fault. You still have to own that you blew up at your friends. You still blew up at them for something that was ultimately a non-issue. If it's happening consistently, you should probably seek therapy in order to deal with whatever the underlying trigger issue is. And I'll have resources for that at the end of my video, but bleed is on the player themselves to deal with. Your friends can help you recognize it, but ultimately you have to figure out why you're getting so much bleed off of this particular thing. And if that means you have to stop participating in that thing until you manage it, then please do that. It's more fun when we are actively taking care of ourselves and our friends. And finally, third, and I'm really sorry guys, but you're gonna get hit again. It's not to say that women are not also issues, but unfortunately, a lot of our male LARPers, you guys have a lot of bad ambassadors. It's not that you guys all do it, but there are enough of you that are problems and have been for years. That's the problem. In play is in play. Just because you guys hit it off in play, aka as your characters, doesn't mean that you get to make the moves out of play as your peoples, as your normal everyday selves. If you get told no, suck it up. You're not owed. It doesn't matter that they were nice to you in a game. It doesn't matter to you if they were nice to you out of game. That's called being decent. No one of any gender identity or expression owes you hanky-panky or anything else. If you get rebuffed and decide that means to push them into more after you were told no, know that you're the asshole. Just you. It's not their fault. They didn't lead you on, and they don't owe you because they were nice. Anyway, before I go into a full rant, let's move into how LARP organizers can help serve their LGBT communities better. First, this doesn't apply to all games. Some games out there are doing awesome at their efforts to include and tell varied perspectives. Y'all keep doing what you're doing. However, the vast majority of American LARPs need work. They tend to be, especially in older games. You know who you are. Male and cisgender dominated. That leaves wide swaths of stories untold. One of the easiest solutions to this is to hire staff within the LGBT community to write those plots and modules and characters. We see lots of kings and queens and the accompanying stories that go with that, including marriages, etc., love stories, but we almost never see stories about us. They can be portrayed just as easily as heterosexual couples. There doesn't need to be extra kissing. Have us hold hands. We like that. Hand-holding is good. Hand-holding is bae. I can't believe I just said that. However, I can understand the fear of getting it wrong when it comes from not telling stories familiar to you. And that's legit. That's understandable. What's not is that most games don't seek out those voices. If you don't see voices at your table, reach out. Bring us in. We want to tell stories with you. We will gladly tell stories with you. But you have to support us. You can't just bring us in and then let us drown. You have to help. It's real simple. And one of the other things that you can consider on the line of bringing in voices is that you can incorporate simple things like pronoun markers. There are ways to do that without it interfering with the game. There are several games that already do this, and it works really well. And you can choose to opt in or opt out. It's really easy. And if you want to do more, you could honestly just do a queer night to identify non-standard identifying players to LARP. Beyond that, just give us queer stories. It doesn't even have to be about their queerness. But it should be part of their story in the same way it is for traditional stories. For the characters that we do already meet. But moving away from this experience enhancer, most games need to be more proactive about the problem elements that we face. I mentioned missing stairs. I promise you guys I know how to talk. Ugh. But I mentioned missing stairs earlier, and we'll cover it now. We all know someone that fits that definition. And speaking up against them tends to put minority individuals at risk of losing their communities. Usually this person is always known as a creep after they're ousted. And the reason they didn't get ousted earlier is because there was no proof they actually harmed someone yet. We have to be better about policing these individuals before they hurt someone. If that means publicly telling someone that something isn't cool, we need to do it, and staff should back the player at harm. We need to shine a light on the underserved in our community so that the predators that do come in don't stay. If the goal of a LARP organizer is to offer a safe environment to all players, we need to be proactive about policing our own communities. Some games are doing awesome with this. This isn't for you. Please keep helping your players. We see and we appreciate your efforts. This is only one small part of our community, and I hope this helps shed light on some of the issues that queer individuals face within the LARP community. I hope you'll stay with me as we explore this together further and break down the things that also affect players and therefore their entertainment at a game. It's not possible to hit everything, but making an active effort that is continuously improving, especially ones that your players do see, goes a long way into fostering a healthy, safe game. In 2 weeks, I'm planning to cover trans experiences in the LARP community and how things can be improved to create a safe space for them, regardless of identity or expression. And I'm covering this separate from queer identity because I do believe it is enough of a difference to merit its own examination. While I myself am not trans, I am family to several trans folks, and it's important to me to have their voices and other voices like them heard. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, hit the like button and subscribe so that you'll be notified when part 3 comes out. And let me know what you thought in the comments below, and if you'd like to see me come for something specific. If you like this video and you want to help support my work, please visit my Ko-Fi. Have a lovely weekend and stay safe. Bye!